and welcome to another edition of our Facebook Live sessions. My name is Alexandra, and today I'm here with students that are going to tell us a little bit more about their study abroad experiences. So if you could please tell us your name and introduce yourselves.
I'm Sarah. I am a second year epidemiology student at the College of Global Public Masters.
I'm Maya. I'm a second year global health student.
I'm Rachel. I'm a first year part-time SBS student.
So let's begin by talking about where did you go and how was your experience?
So I went to Tel Aviv, which NYU campus is over there. And I took the class Emergency Preparedness and Response, A Global Perspective with Dr. Abramson. And long story short, it was the best class I'd actually ever taken, and I didn't expect that. It was fantastic though.
And what did a typical day look like for you?
So it was very compact because it was only a 2.5 week class. So you'd wake up in the morning and then have breakfast, and then it would you'd either have to go to the NYU Tel Aviv campus for a class, usually guest lecturer or class with lecture with Dr. Abramson, or there would be trips on the weekend. So they set up all these trips for us, which was incredible, to all different parts of Israel, and so yeah, and we would get back around like 5.
Oh, so it's like fun.
Yeah. I went to Abu Dhabi and I took the Behavioral Communication Strategies for Global Epidemics course with Dr. Dietary. To sum up my experience, I have to agree it was really great. It was so rewarding to interact with different people, especially because it's an NYU and UNICEF course, so we got to work with some UNICEF professionals, and I think that was a little bit different. A typical day, our day started early. Mind you, it was an 8-day class, so we start about 8:30, and we go to the NYU Abu Dhabi campus, and then we'll go to about 5, and it'll just be a series of different sessions. We'll learn about behavior model theory, we'll have discussions, we'll do activities, we'll get broken up into our teams, and we'll get a case study and work on what our intervention would be. So it was a very scheduled class, but at the same time, it was very interactive as well. And yeah.
Amazing.
So I went to Shanghai China, and we were at the NYU Shanghai campus. So for 10 days, our typical day was we'd wake up in our hotel and have breakfast, and then we would go to class between 9:30 and 10, and our class was with Dr. William Rom, and it was a global climate change course, and it was structured very much as a discussion-based course, so we did a lot of readings, we watched a lot of presentations, and we really kind of discussed the issues that stem from climate change specifically in Shanghai, and also in the United States. And then we would go to about 12, have an hour lunch break, we would go either to the cafeteria or outside of the campus, and then we would go back to class around 1 and finish up around 3. And then we had a couple site visit trips where we went to a solar farm and we saw renewable energies, and yeah.
Nice. So I know that many of you might be watching and wondering, okay, but when do the applications for these courses start? How do I get my plane ticket? How do I choose accommodations? So what tips can you give based on your experience?
So the applications are typically due, I believe the application was due at the end of September. So it's really good to start thinking about that in the summer, like before you even get there, just to see if this is something you want to do. And then I think I was at the end of, they were due, I think, the end of October, I think it was something like that. And then you didn't book your flights until, they had to make sure, there was enough people to go. So you don't book your flights or do anything until they tell you to, which is really helpful. Like NYU just was really helpful in every step of the way, because it was a longer process, but it was totally worth it in the end. And NYU was really helpful with it.
And just to specify a little bit, the courses usually happen during J term.
Yes.
Which is those first 3 weeks of January?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my was from January 6th. Oh no, January 7th to the 23rd.
Similar, we do the pre-application form in about end of September, early October. The difference with this class is they had a supplemental application that was sent to you. It's like a Google form. So you fill it out, you answer a few questions of why you want to take the course, and then you get notified if you're entered into the course or not. And similar as to when to book your flight, they tell you when you can book, okay, this is where you should try and get in. So for me, we would have to get in by the 12th because the class ran from the 13th to the 21st, and we would depart by the 22nd. If you do want to stay a little bit extra, they mentioned that, but also if you have any questions about it, you can talk to someone about it. So that was also very helpful. And it's about similar to what she was saying. It's basically you just have to stay on top of everything. For this class, we did have some pre-work that was done before the class actually started. So during break a little bit, I had to do a few assignments, but it's because the class is so condensed into 8 days that doing work and doing the sessions that are happening in the 8 days, it's actually a lot of work. So pre-work, make sure you get that done ahead of time.
For Shanghai, it was also pretty much the same. We were told to get in on the weekend prior to the Monday start date of the first day of class. And then our classes ran for 10 days, and then we flew home the following weekend, or some people extended. You did have to get a visa, and for that visa, we had to go to the Chinese consulate in New York City. So having to get to the consulate and wait in line in the morning, and that process was a little taxing for some of the participants. Just clearing your schedule, making sure you have time. You have to be there in person with the right documents, and if you're missing something, they can't process you, and that could take up to 4 business days or 2 weeks. So once everything was cleared, our flights, our assurance in the program, that was the next most important thing we had to do. But other than that, it was a very simple process to get there.
So that's when it would be really useful to maybe go to the OGS office and talk to them to get help with the whole visa situation and plan really ahead of time, right?
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah. It would be helpful to go in person, make sure you have everything organized before you go.
Yeah. And how about vaccines or anything like that? Did you guys experience any of that?
We didn't, no, not in Tel Aviv. I mean, they're recommended vaccines for everywhere, but it's in the city. We're mostly in the city,
right.
And so they weren't like, you have to get these before you go. But it's always a good idea to check into like a track with your clinician or something about like what you should get.
Yeah, perhaps for these locations that wasn't the case, but I know that sometimes students get sent maybe to like Africa or other areas, and they do require other vaccines. So it'd be nice to check. And so as you prepare for a trip, I think it's pretty common to have some preconceived ideas about the place before you get there. But during your time abroad, did anything surprise you?
So I mean, my mom was a little nervous about me going, but just because there's conflict everywhere. So I was like a little bit concerned, but I was also like, you know what, the U.S. has very good relations with Israel. Like I didn't feel insecure at all when I was there, and even on the trips, the site visits and everything, and when you made sure we had like a person from Israel there that traveled with you to make sure that everything was fine, and that was really helpful. And so I was a little nervous about that, but then when I was there, it was like that was it was completely fine, and it was great. So
for Abu Dhabi, not necessarily, because we had a pre-meeting and we were talking about what clothes to wear, and we'll dress pretty modestly. I think if there was one thing that did surprise me was the fact of I thought it was a lot more modern than I expected it to be. But everyone was so friendly, very welcoming. I didn't feel uncomfortable in any sort of way at all. So it was actually fairly easy to get around. Didn't have to Uber a lot, but Uber was very cheap, so I wasn't complaining. But if you had questions, you would just ask, and people would help you out.
For China, there's a lot of preconceived notions that it's dirty and that the air is really poor. One thing that we realized was, although the air quality was poor, you didn't necessarily feel it when you walked outside. You didn't feel gross, like you were covered in dirt. And then, as well as their public facilities were extremely clean. Everything was super clean. They kept the subways very clean. Clubs were very clean. The malls, everything was extremely clean. And I think that was one of the biggest surprises. One thing that did shock a lot of people on our trip was the dietary restrictions and the lack of options. It's very heavily influenced Chinese, Asian culture food, and there aren't a lot of flexible places to eat if you have dietary restrictions, such as vegetarian. Vegetarian essentially didn't exist in China. Their idea of vegetarian was anything not pork. So people struggled a lot to find vegetarian options, and picky eaters struggled a lot to find food that they would eat. But if you have a wide cultural range of cuisine, it is a place for you. But perhaps something to look into is the fact that there aren't many options other than Chinese food, and it's not sesame chicken, it's Chinese chicken with vegetables and things that you may not necessarily know, but I mean, it was delicious. So
That sounds really good. So ever since you went on this trip abroad, do you think that you understand the subject you studied better?
Yes, for sure. So my background is I'm a nurse already, and I want to do infection control stuff. So I really wanted a class that touched upon that kind of stuff, and I learned so much about bioterrorism and just cyber terrorism and just how to respond in these ways. And we actually went to a conference in Tel Aviv that's the largest emergency preparedness international conference in the world, and it happens every 2 years. And I learned, it was just 3 full days of just the highest levels of emergency preparedness teams in the world. And that was an incredible experience for networking. It was an incredible experience for just learning. And I learned more from just hearing what these people who've actually been there had to say, and just kind of conceptualized it a lot better. And I actually joined the American Red Cross after I came back as a volunteer, just because it was just such a great time, and I learned so much. So.
amazing.
Same with me. I was told about this class from my colleagues prior who've done it, and I was like, okay, I need to take this class. I need to see what the hype is about. And when I actually got into the class, I was like, wow, I'm learning so much. You don't learn just about different types of case studies or global epidemics that are happening in the world. You learn how to respond to them properly based on a certain avatar that we were assigned to. So we have to figure out how to properly communicate with the people, think about what the resources they have, what the resources they didn't have, how our interventions would essentially be feasible and applicable to these areas. And they weren't just made up case studies, these are actual case studies that are happening currently. And for us, and for me especially, learning from UNICEF staff and just we had staff from the American University of Beirut come and talk about global epidemics, behavior theories, epidemiology sessions. It was really helpful to know that everything that we're learning in the program is applied to this one course, and I can honestly say this is probably the best course I've taken, because ever since I've taken this class, my way of thinking has completely shifted in terms of when I want to develop an intervention or even think about something. I'm not just thinking about, okay, we need to do this. It's okay, we need to think about who we're serving, what the age demographic is, what their other necessities or comorbidities are, and not just this one global epidemic that's happening in the area right now. So I really thought that was something that I really supported from the class.
So I chose Shanghai because I had studied Chinese language and culture for the past 9 years, and I really wanted an experience to practice the language that I've been learning. So before even knowing what class was being offered, I knew that was a location I wanted to go to. And then our course was global climate change, and I work in emergency medicine, and I am very healthcare oriented, and that's what I would like to apply my MPH to. And I never thought about climate change affecting health, and so we focus a lot on respiratory illness associated with climate change. And I think that this course truly embodied the GPH mind of how public health is more than just one field, and how all these concentrations and fields integrate together, and really this is giving us a better sense of how we think about things and how we approach things and how we'll use this degree later in life. And so taking this course on climate change, while I originally didn't think that was something I would have been interested in, opened up a whole new world to me with climate change in respect to illnesses that affect people due to what climate change they're exposed to.
And thinking about the future, if maybe we go 5 years from now, what image, experience, or lesson do you think you'll carry with you and remember from this trip?
So for me, a big part of Israel is resilience, it's community resilience, and that idea that just coming back from things that happen. And so we spoke to this woman who worked at a resilience center that Dr. Abramson, connected us with, and she was just kind of explaining about how, everyday life can be hard, and especially there, especially where geographically she lived. So, but every single person I talked to, including her, they all were just like, were the most optimistic people in the entire world, and it taught me so much about bouncing back, and just, doing your best, and then if something happens, you just figure it out, and then you bounce right back. And just even speaking to her and her experiences, and I think some of the other people I went on the trip with would agree, it was actually one of the most, I'm not going to forget that at all. And it was just like, there's a lot people in other places go through a lot, and so do we, but it was just amazing to connect with somebody like that who's been through that, and I learned quite a bit about resilience.
For me, I think that, I want to say this correctly, I think that what I can take away from in the future is really knowing the area you're going to work in, especially since we were in Abu Dhabi, but we were working on cases in Yemen, in DRC, and Pakistan. So as someone outside going into a country, you assume a lot of things, or you just do the bare minimum of research. One of the things I had to learn was ask a lot of questions. Ask a lot of questions to people who've worked in the area or worked on a particular topic that you're focusing on. Really research into what the culture is, trying to understand the people, because you can't just go into an area, at least that's what I've learned. You can't go into an area just saying, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I'll figure it out, but or work around the culture, but you really can't, because at the end of the day, you may end up leaving this area, but the people are still going to be there. So really knowing the people, the culture, the population, everything about the area you're working in is very important, and I think moving forward, whatever career I happen to do, I will take that with me.
I think for China, one of the most interesting things that I, as well as my other participants, would agree with, the progressiveness of the society in Shanghai, at least. They're very much ahead of the times that we are in the United States, and I think that represented the need for there to be more global communication. The Chinese transportation system and even their capital system of how they spend money is very different than what we use in the United States. And I think that their progressiveness and these strengths that they exhibit are things that as a country, we should be able to pick up on, and there should be more communication and ways to share ideas of how to better accomplish things as a country. And I think between China and other countries that have excelled in certain areas, it's important in a global perspective for other countries and nations to share ideas and be able to assimilate them into their own cultures.
Absolutely. And so now that you're talking about these experiences, it seems like you had a great time. But I'm curious, besides the great study abroad opportunities, what made you choose NYU GPH as your school for public health?
One thing I was looking for when I was applying to schools and looking at schools was just a more global, worldly look at things. Not just this is what your major is, this is what you're gonna do. It just really encompasses a bigger idea of the world, and not so much just your little community. NYU in general has a very it focuses on the greater good, and I think in any kind of career in public health, especially you need to have that experience. Also, it was really interesting to know all the different opportunities that NYU really does expose you to in terms of career paths, in terms of research, or in terms of emergency response. And so I really enjoyed the paradigm of itself, the worldly look at the bigger picture, because I'm that kind of person. You just stand back and all the teachers, all the professors, they really are okay, so think about this way, think about it differently, and I find I'm thinking a little more creatively since I've been here. So,
for me, so this was actually a different approach for me because this was my second time applying to graduate school, and when I was looking into the different programs, I wanted a school that made me feel that I can do what I wanted in my program, but also still learn more about life skills and valuable skills that I can apply into my future career. With NYU, I'm a New Yorker, so I went to school here, I worked here, and I really took a step back. I was like, I don't really know about New York, but only like the fun stuff. I don't know that much about like public health or even the health system. I know a lot more now in general, and I thought that NYU really provided an opportunity for me to connect with people of similar interests, but I also liked how diversified the program was. You have global health, you have SBS, you have EPI, you have community health science, you have health policy, you have health management. You have various amount of different avenues to do public health and not just one straight avenue, and I really like that NYU focuses on their students and really tries to do the best for their students and not just for them. Because at the end of the day, it's the students who are really being impacted, and they're the ones who are taking everything that they're learning from here and putting it into their future careers and future practices. And I thought NYU gave me that sense of opportunity.
Similarly, I wanted a multifaceted program, and I think that goes into wanting these new perspectives and different ways of thinking. And I think NYU truly embodies that. And by taking classes like epidemiology with people who want to go into health policy and regulation, as well as healthcare, brings you closer to your future team members. And I think having those wide perspectives and different views and taking classes on things that you never thought maybe you'd be interested in really gives you that opportunity to look forward to the future and working with your classmates now as your future colleagues, and being able to understand that these people all took these classes, and now regardless of what we're specializing in or going into for our future careers, we have this wide range mental capacity to apply global public health anywhere.
Absolutely. And for those prospective students that might be joining us in the fall, do you have any travel hacks or tips, or even just for life at NYU that you want to share with them?
Take advantage of every opportunity you can. Which I know it's a big one, but it's true. I mean, like what they were saying, NYU offers so many different things. Even the study abroad programs, that was actually I've never heard of a graduate school that allows people to go experience and take a class in another country. And that's just so important. So even if you're studying abroad, don't just be tired one day and go and do experience, because that is what's ultimately going to shape your mind.
Similar, I think that you should come into the program being very open-minded. You may have an idea of what you want to do, but then as you're taking classes or meeting people of different backgrounds, and even the study abroad program, you sort of shift and you may have something else you're interested in. So it's not just something that you should just stay closed-minded to, but also seize the opportunities that do come to you. I know it's very hard, you really want to focus on school and do well in school, but at the same time, you can learn so much by just experiencing things. And I think definitely the study abroad program, which I haven't heard either a lot of national programs do, is take the opportunity to do it. It will honestly probably change your life. It definitely changed mine. So yeah.
I think also just don't be afraid of going somewhere that maybe you don't speak the language, because although there is that little hiccup in the road, being immersed in a culture, even when you don't understand the language, is a totally different experience. And I think sometimes it's hard to want to really immerse yourself in a location that makes you uncomfortable. But I think that's also more so a reason to go and to do that, is to challenge yourself and to find yourself in new ways and new lights. And I think being in China, being in a culture that was totally different than anything I'd ever been around before, was something that really forced me to grow, and not only through my experiences, but as an individual. And also travel hack wise, wherever you go in the world, there's stores, there's clothes, there's accessories, and China had multitude of opportunities to go shopping. And I think if I were to go back, I wouldn't have packed as much, because I would have liked to buy more. So and being able to buy things from a different culture or different, fashion sense is really fun. And so pack less of your own stuff and buy more of their stuff.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
That's a great tip. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to questions that were submitted from audience members. So our first question comes from Aishwarya, and she asks, what is the selection criteria and process for study abroad opportunities?
At least for Tel Aviv, you just had to essentially be in good academic standing, and it was just an elective class, so it was a requirement. So you just express an interest in it, and then you apply. And there wasn't, different from, it sounds like the other programs. Tel Aviv was, I think everyone that signed up were able to do it. So I don't know, I think that's different. We didn't have any supplemental, special application or anything.
Similarly, yes, there was a supplemental application, but I also think that it had to do with your good academic standing, you show interest in the course. In terms of how it works with the supplemental application, I think that you can talk to someone or even talk to a professor, Dr. Dickey. You can ask them about the process, but the process is fairly straightforward. You apply, make sure you're good standing, show interest, and just keep be on top of it. If you really are committed, be committed, because it is an elective, but this is your elective.
Some of the courses had prerequisites that you needed to meet in order to attend the study abroad. Shanghai did not, but on the website they do list out for you if there are prerequisites. Other than the application criteria, I didn't select myself to participate, but I think everyone that did apply was accepted into the program, as well as good academic standing and just being able to put down the time to spend 2 weeks in a different country.
There actually were prerequisites, now that I remember, for Tel Aviv, but they're generally core classes that everybody has to take anyway. Right. Mine was Epi 1, I think, and one more thing that we take, at least for an Epi major, we take the first semester. Right. So just look at those, but more likely than not, those classes are probably already, you're already having to take them.
Yeah.
So
more than likely you're gonna have 2 years to do this.
Yeah.
So either your first year or your second year, just prepare ahead of time and be in good academic standing, right?
Yep.
And ask questions.
Ask questions.
Ask questions.
So speaking of questions, we have another question from Jade, who wants to know, how do you finance your study abroad courses?
Well, so there is a program fee, which I believe it covers room and board and some of the site visits and everything like that. But other than that, you can actually, financial aid will actually, you can potentially, if you're eligible, you can get a loan, like a student loan, once you're registered in the class. So once they see that I work in the financial aid office too, so I probably know way too much, but you just have to contact the financial aid office and say, I'm thinking about doing this J-term class, how do I make this work? And they can really help you walk through that, but it can be partially financed by it.
Okay.
Similarly, I actually ended up calling the financial aid office.
So,
we did have a program fee, and for that it was housing, transportation, and meals. And then in terms of the cost for the actual course itself, you either call financial aid, or sometimes, depending on your financial situation, for me, I was able to utilize some loan money I had left over, and that helped me pay for the class. But also I did reach out to financial aid to make sure that was okay, if there was any caveats to it, because it's very different. It's not like you're taking it in a regular semester course or semester term, it's during a J term. So you really need to see if that will work out or not. And again, just ask questions. If you're not sure, call financial aid. They can direct you to someone you can talk to, or they can help you out. But it's really just safe to ask questions.
So I found out about the J-term opportunity during my orientation back in August. And so since I'm only a part-time student, I work full-time, and I began putting money aside from each paycheck into my J-term pool. Mm-hmm. And so by the time January came around, I had saved up enough, but other opportunities as well to finance.
So it seems like it all comes down to planning.
Yes.
To plan ahead of time.
Definitely plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Well, thank you guys so much for sharing all of your experiences today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.